Good morning, Sabah al-Khair. Esteemed colleagues and fellow weavers of justice, we are present here today to discuss not only how money moves, but also whose future it moves toward. Present in English means here. There's a similar word in French, présent or présente, which also has the same meaning, but in Arabic, the word hadir, which is present, takes this meaning a step further. It means I'm here, I'm available, I'm willing to support, and I'm willing to take action. So I truly hope that we are all present here in this sense today. I speak to you as a feminist, as part of a living, breathing movement made up of women, marginalized groups, young people, and communities who have carried hope on their backs, policies in their hand, and justice in their hearts. But let's be honest. Hope alone is not a strategy, and passion is not enough. Extraordinary resilience cannot replace adequate funding. If we want systems that change, we need systems-level resourcing. The urgency of our cause of gender justice has never been clearer. And when we talk about justice, gender justice, we are not just talking about women's economic empowerment or representation in leadership. We are talking about dismantling the systems, the economic, political, cultural, and colonial systems that keep power concentrated in the hands of the few, while communities at the margins carry the heaviest burdens. We are talking about justice that transforms, justice that heals, justice that redistributes, and justice that rebuilds. Justice that creates new possibilities. And if we are truly committed to this vision, we must ask ourselves, what does it mean to resource gender justice with the seriousness it deserves? How do we ensure that those who are closest to the struggles are also the closest to the money? Across the global majority world, feminist movements are holding the line against rising authoritarianism, gender-based violence, climate crisis, forced displacement, wars, fights, shrinking civic space. Movements are building power through advocacy, through organizing, through care. And they are the architects of new worlds. And yet, these movements remain dramatically underfunded. Most receive only project-based support, short-term support, or nothing at all. They are expected to carry the world on their backs with no safety nets, no long-term commitments, and little trust. Data shows that the current rate of progress, if we keep going at the current rate of progress, it's going to take us 300 years to close the prevailing gap in discriminatory laws and legal frameworks for women and girls. A recent research that was launched in 2024 shows that an extra $360 billion have to be invested annually for us to be able to achieve gender justice by 2030. And we know 2030 is the year where the world committed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Our global promise for development. The SDGs are in crisis, I can assure you. Most gender indicators show regression, especially in contexts affected by conflict and economic instability, which is the case in our region in the global south. Feminist movements remain systematically excluded from decision-making tables and funding flows. Let us be clear. We cannot achieve the SDGs without gender justice, and we cannot achieve gender justice without resourcing feminist movements. Gender equality is not only SDG 5. It's a cross-cutting accelerator that determines the successes of all 17 goals, whether it's climate action, poverty reduction, health, or education. Now, I really want us to see how much we know about funding for feminist movements, so we're gonna ask some questions. Can we put the presentation, please? These questions are based on the preliminary findings of AWITS 2024, where the Money for Feminist Organizing survey that targeted 1,200 feminist groups working on gender justice. So can we give a wild guess of what was the median annual budget for feminist groups in 2023? So the median is the middle. 50% are below that and 50% are above it. Below 20,000, between 20 or 30,000, or between 50 and 100,000. Just a wild guess. I'm not going to give the answer if no one gives the guess. B. It's B. It is B. So the median budget was $22,000. So more than 50% have budgets that are less $22,000. And only 5% have budgets exceeding $1 million. So out of 1,200 groups and organizations working on gender justice, only 5% have budgets that exceed $1 million. So I would also ask the groups if external funding stopped immediately, and that was in 2024, so we're not talking about the current context. How long could feminist groups continue operating? I'm not going to ask you, I'm going to just say it. They said they could operate for less than 6 months, and some said they had to close immediately. So we know that feminist groups they have no reserves. They don't have enough money to invest in their organizational structures, and they're just responding to immediate needs. We all talk about the need for long-term, core, flexible funding. But do feminist groups actually receive feminist funding? What do you think? Is it the predominant type of funding? No. Definitely not. Approximately 30% of feminist groups receive no core funding. So actually, they don't have enough resources to capacitate their teams, to invest in their structures, or even sometimes to sustain the work. I just want to share some figures about the global context. In 2022, out of the $204 billion total ODA dollars, only $453 million. I know the math is a bit difficult, so I did it. It's 0.22%. That actually went to feminist funding. 8% only of private philanthropy targets gender. And 1% of the total gender-focused funding reaches feminist movement at the grassroots level. So the amount that trickles down to feminist movements at the grassroots level is less than 1%. And we are expecting, as all the esteemed colleagues shared, more funding cuts. In 2025, the projected ODA cuts are between 9 and 17%, which translate to around $2.9 billion. These funding cuts will directly be affecting funding for feminist movements. And the last question is, who do you think were the most significant funding sources for feminist groups? So 1,200 is a representative sample. Who do you think funded most these groups? Is it multilateral, UNs, bilateral donors, governments, philanthropic foundations, or women's and feminist funds? It's C. It's women and feminist funds. And this brings me to the critical role of women and feminist funds. Women and feminist funds are not traditional grant makers. They are movement infrastructure. They are created by feminists and for feminists, with the explicit goal of shifting both money and power. Women and feminist funds operate with a deep political understanding of the context they fund. They prioritize trust, flexibility, and long-term relationships over bureaucratic hoops and extractive reporting. They are often the first funders to reach the most marginalized groups, young, vulnerable groups working on intersecting thematic areas, rural, displaced, migrant, informal, and emerging movements that are otherwise locked out of the global funding systems. But they do more than just fund. They nurture ecosystems. They translate donor commitments into accessible support. They engage in political education. They provide care in the face of burnout and violence. They fund not just the outcomes, they fund the process of organizing itself. They understand that care work, healing justice, and collective safety are not soft issues. They are actually the essential infrastructures of resistance and resilience. But at the moment, women and feminist funds themselves are facing unprecedented funding cuts. I'm going to show you some figures. So 78% of the women and feminist funds, and this data is according to Prospera, the international network of women and feminist funds, 78% have confirmed funding losses. And 30% expect further cuts in 2026. So out of this smallest pot of money that are the main supporters for women and feminist groups at the grassroots level, 78% confirmed funding cuts and 30% expected further funding cuts. And you can anticipate the impact on frontline movements. Marginalized groups working on intersectional thematic areas and are going to lose their sole source of funding. SRHR services and advocacy will be impeded, and the Global South organizing may be halted. We know that our movements are resilient. They're going to sustain their activism at any cost, but we cannot keep asking them to do more with less. We must take immediate action to reverse this bleak trajectory. To truly realize gender justice, we must strengthen and scale women and feminist funds across the global majority world. With money funders from the global north moving away from core funding toward rigid short-term goals, while others are increasing administrative burdens under the guise of risk management, some abruptly exiting the sector without notice or care, we cannot but ask ourselves, where is the Global South wealth in the fight for gender justice? We need to call on our own institutions, our foundations, our development bank, businesses, high net worth individuals, and governments to rise to this moment. We need to fund feminist organizing. We need to invest in feminist funds that know how to reach the edges. We need to co-create regional resourcing ecosystem that keep power and money close to the communities. If we are serious about justice, social justice, and gender justice, we must be serious about how we fund it. We have to fund feminist movements because they are transforming lives. We have to fund women and feminist funds because they are transforming systems. And we have to fund gender justice because it's the foundation of everything else we say we believe in. I urge us to stop polishing prevalent rules that are no longer viable. We have to build a new game. We have to make our own rules. Feminist philanthropy challenges us to not just ask what we fund, but how and why. Are we funding to preserve the status quo or to challenge and transform it? Because only when we center care, justice, and equity and transform it, we can build a future that leaves no one behind. So what does this mean in terms of gender financing? It means we need a shift, not just in resources, but also in mindsets. From funding projects to resourcing movements, from rigid indicators to flexible trust-based support, from short-term deliverables to long-term transformation. This isn't just a moral imperative. It's a development necessity. Investment in feminist movements is an investment in our collective future. Thank you.